Never Have I Ever by Moonymoment. Never have I ever snogged a Hufflepuff. It was a lazy Friday evening in the Gryffindor Tower. Mock exams for 6th year had just ended, and Sirius had banged out 2 bottles of fire whiskey he had smuggled from God knows where to celebrate. It had taken a good 10 minutes for them to figure out how to transfigure placemats into small shot glasses. Peter had smashed the last set they had last month in a tragic accident involving a dog and a magus and a fanged frisbee. But they had eventually made enough for a small group to take a shot, toasting to freedom from exams, only to be rudely reminded by Remus that their actual end-of-year exams were going to take place in a matter of months. Lily threw a cushion at him, hitting him with an oomph, invoking high-on-life laughter from all their friends. About an hour in or so, Lily had suggested they play a Muggle party game, Never Have I Ever. Mary immediately backed this, and Remus, the only other person raised by Muggles, expectantly met with an awkward smile, as the blonde boy was just as clueless as the rest of the gang raised by the wizarding world. It was simple enough, however, to get a hang of it. Take a shot if you have, don't if you haven't. And they went around in group giving suggestions. Due to the competitive nature of a select few people in the circle, namely Sirius and Marlene, the game quickly became a vicious pile of secrets that they used smugly against one another. Never have I ever howled at the moon, Lily was saying, invoking an eye roll and a dry, very funny Evans from Remus, who took a shot willingly. What Lily didn't notice, however, is that the skillfully out-of-sight shot taken by Sirius, much to the amusement of James and Peter. Lily was next. She hummed lightly, eyes flickering around the group to determine who her next victim would be. Her eyes rested upon Remus, sitting by her side. Please, not again. And then flickered to Mary, and she smirked, having made up her mind. Never have I ever, she started with a tipsy grin on her face, snogged a member of the noble and most ancient house of Black, she finished, putting on rather exaggerated posh accents and to deliver a full-on title of Sirius' beloved family. He scoffed and threw a pillow at her, which she caught. She turned to Remus, who said, "I hate you, McCannon," in a playful jeer, and threw the shot back with vigor. He shuddered, opening eyes, and was met with Sirius, who shot him a wink from across the group. Remus flipped him off. 2 other members of the small group had taken a shot at Marlene's turn. Mary, which was unsurprising as they had dated on and off for the majority of their 3rd year and had snuck in every area of the castle possible. And James. Lily whipped around and raised her eyeballs in shock, invoking a fit of loud, hearty laughter from Sirius and a shy smile from James. "It was my first kiss," James said matter-of-factly, "and my 2nd and 3rd. He finished with less confidence. The girls who had not known this sat in disbelief. Sirius guffawed still, giving James a high five. "Fuck yeah, I was." And Remus, who had sat quietly since taking a shot, buzzed with an idea. He knew it was dirty, but the fire whiskey seemed to have soaked whatever part of his brain made rational decisions, and he was suddenly very excited that it was his turn. James Fleeman Potter was many things. He was loud, friendly, cunning, talented. He was good on a broom, good with a quill, good with a wand. Remus knew firsthand, after a particularly drunken party in 4th year, that he was good with his mouth. But above all, James Potter was painfully, openly, disastrously bisexual. It had been a revelation in his third year, made to his 3 friends in their dorm room by a very panicked James, who had been at Quidditch practice and found he spent more time looking at the 6th-year beater Bellby's ass than the bloody quaffle. Sirius had immediately assured James that it was okay, that he didn't have to be one or the other, but he could be both. They could be both. 2 birds, 1 stone. And that was how Remus, who painfully closeted, painfully homosexual, and excruciatingly in love with his best friend, had realized that maybe he had a chance. But that wasn't the story he was rehashing here. James, over 3 years since his revelation, had come out to every person in the room currently, both willingly and unwilling. Marlene, ironically, or perhaps unfortunately, the only lesbian, had walked into him getting off with Ravenclaw, and her screams of anguish could be heard all through Gryffindor Tower. Remus rationalized this in his head and decided that James exposing him for getting with that Slytherin in 3rd year earlier deserved payback. "Your turn, Remus," Lily proclaimed, tipsy, leaning her head into Mary's shoulder. Remus smirked, and his eyes flicked to James. The messy-haired marauder, despite fitting all the jump jock stereotypes, was not stupid, and his face fell into a cold look of realization immediately. "Don't you dare, Moony," he warned, but Remus waved him off and cleared his throat. "Never have I ever," Remus started, leaving a long pause for the anticipation to build, "snugged 2 members of the noble and most ancient House of Black." He finished the sentence with a shit-eating grin on his face, and James somehow looked like he could both cry and burst into hysterical laughter. Sirius's eyebrows furrowed slightly. 2, he mumbled lazily, glazed over the eyes, scanning the people around him. James, after a painful moment of silence, threw his shot back with confidence, wincing and slamming the glass back down with a thud. Remus was looking at him with a wide grin, and James shook his head, his own smile growing. "You are going straight to hell, Moony." Remus laughed loudly, and it was at this moment that the puzzle pieces in Sirius's brain apparently fell into place. "Ah!" he yelped, pointing at James, mouth open. The air hung heavy in the room. Lily's jaw was practically on the floor, Mary's not far behind, and Marlene hid her lower half of her face behind her hand, shaking with silent. You! James' lips formed into a tight line, finally looking up to meet Sirius's eyes. Remus didn't think Sirius had ever looked more horrified in his life, and it took every cell of his body not to burst out into laughter. Again, like Marlene, who by this point had silent tears streaming down her face. "Wait," Mary started, shaking her head. Wait. She stared at James with a look of disbelief. "Which one?" "Come on, Ma. I'm not exactly going to be banging Bella, the crazy bitch, am I?" Banging! Sirius practically screamed, and James turned white as snow. No, oh my god, bad food. Sirius scrambled to his feet, knocking over a bottle of fire whiskey by his side, eyes wide and gaze hard. He took one look at James, at Remus, then back at James, and turned on his feet, stalked off towards the staircase. Regulus! He's hardly going to be up there, is he?" Remus shouted, as Sirius had already disappeared up the stairwell. Lily took this opportunity to hit James with full force on the arm, dropping her hand from where they had been covering her mouth in shock. Regulus. Regulus, she gasped, and James groaned again. Yes, that is his name. Well done. When? Gasped Marlene, and James sighed. 4th year. Remus cleared his throat, and James scowled at him. And 5th year. Remus cleared his throat again, and if he hadn't been so drunk, he would almost be scared James was going to kill him in his sleep. And a little bit earlier this year too, James finished running his hand over his face, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Mary and Lily were both laughing in disbelief. Lily pinched the bridge of her nose and muttered, "Holy motherfucking shit, Potter," under her breath. Marlene opened her mouth to say something, but was immediately quieted by a sound of Sirius stomping back up the stair. James looked up frantic and pointed at Remus. "If he kills me, I'm going to fucking kill you." Remus bit his lip, grinning, as Sirius entered the room, gaze fury on the marauder trap clutched in his hands. He stalked up to James and Remus, held his breath. He stalked up to James and Remus, held his breath. He stalked up to James and Remus held his breath. It was okay for the time being, as all he did was grab James by the ear and turn him on his heels, stumbling towards the portrait hole, James yelping and scrambling up to his feet, yelling, "Okay, I'm coming, fuck Sirius!" as they walked further down, away from the group into the corridors. Remus, Lily, Marlene, Peter, and Mary exchanged quick glances with each other, and surprisingly, Lily was the first to move, slapping her hands onto her knees and announcing, "Well, I'm not missing this." Regulus was not in the Slytherin dormitories. The gang quickly gathered as Sirius led them to a separate part of the castle. He hopped down the stairs in front of them, having released James's ear and compromised with a firm grip on his arm. They made it down the 3rd floor, and Remus spotted Regulus perched onto one of the window sills, alone, reading rather peacefully. The Slytherin spotted his brother stalking towards him and practically flew to his feet, slamming his book shut and looking between James and Sirius with wide eyes. Sirius and James skidded to a halt in front of the younger Black, the rest of the still tipsy Gryffindors not far behind. Sirius hesitated, looking between them both as if he hadn't planned this far, but was unsure where to start. It turned out he didn't have to, because Regulus said first one. "How did you find out then?" he asked directly at James, who smiled sheepishly and answered, "Drinking game." With a shrug, Regulus nodded. Sirius gaped, looking between the pair frantic before he found his voice. "You! And then you!" he said, gesturing wildly between the two. James winced, but Regulus simply rolled his eyes. "Yes, Sirius, dear brother, do shut up, or you'll wake Peeves." Sirius' eyes widened comically. It was a long, painful moment before he said anything again. "How long?" he asked, still angry but significantly quieter. Regulus inhaled sharply, and Remus raised his eyebrows to a warning. "You're not going to like it." "How long?" 3 years? Sirius's eyebrows raised with such vigor it seemed they were about to slide off his head and fly away. 3 years, give or take. Sirius let go of James with a start and backed a step away. "I don't know which one of you to kill first," he said, hands running through his hair. James sighed, but Sirius began to pace. "How do you and my little brother and He cut off with a low groan, head falling in his hands. Oh dear fucking Merlin's ballsack. He's my brother too. And this is actually fucking incest. Serious. Podfic, please don't make it weird. Don't make it. Don't make it. Then he began to laugh hysterically and unhinged. He, don't make it weird, he says. Oh my god. You have been deflowering my little brother for 3 years, and it's supposed to not be weird? James sighed exasperately, but Regulus screwed up his face in confusion. Deflowering? We didn't. If it means anything, perhaps we didn't. James is cut off with gesturing. James cut in, gesturing wildly, obviously not wanting to say the words. Regulus looked at Sirius and nodded. Regulus looked at Sirius and nodded supportively. Flowers are very much intact, big brother, he said with a nervous smile. Sirius looked aghast. It was an accident, James said, looking at Regulus, who nodded eagerly. We were both lonely and struggling at the time, and he was just, there. Regulus scoffed slightly as his eyes narrowed. Do better, Potter, he warned. Yes, please. Do better, Potter. I don't want to have to be questioned for murder, Regulus hissed, low enough that only Sirius and James could hear him. James ran a hand through his hair and turned back to Sirius. No, that's not what I mean. Okay, we got talking, right? And he was so upset over something that happened at home, and I was upset too. I don't even remember what for, and we kissed. He coughed, obviously treading lightly. Regulus stood beside him, chewing his lip. And it just became a regular thing. Sirius, whose mouth had fallen open slightly, closed, and he chewed on his bottom lip for a moment. How regular? Regulus sighed, and James replied, maybe once a week, he said, looking at Regulus for support, who just shrugged. It wasn't planned. We didn't have a fucking snog schedule, Pat. Sirius exhaled sharply at the word snog, rubbing his hands over his eyes. It was about here that Regulus decided he had enough of walking on eggshells. Oh, for heaven's sake, he grumbled before grabbing James by the collar of his shirt, pulling him down into a kiss, ignoring the loud exclamation from Sirius and the gasp from the group behind him. James immediately melted into him, mouth working against each other perfectly, like they had done all those times before. James's hands gripped into Regulus's waist, and Regulus slid his upwards, tracing James' jaw before digging into a messy hair, invoking a small smile from the taller boy. He kissed James with the passion of someone who was trying to be spiteful, but someone who fueled by hunger that had built up after so many months without touch. James unconsciously pulled him closer, biting his lower lip ever so softly, and Regulus shuddered. Regulus suddenly became aware that Sirius had fallen silent. He released James with a loud smack, placing one last soft kiss on his lips before untangling the taller boy from him and turning to look at his brother. Sirius's jaw had dropped, but the look of shock had fallen slack and been replaced with a hint of a furrowed brow. His eyes flickering between the two in confusion. He closed his mouth and cleared his throat, gaping for a moment before deciding what to say. So you... he croaked quietly, pointing between the both of them. You're... Regulus groaned. Yes, getting off, whatever you want to fucking call it. Happy? It's not like I just gave a whole fucking demonstration for... Wait, what? Regulus blinked. Sirius licked his lips, and took a deep breath. "Are you happy?" he said, and it seemed that this time he was not asking the both of them, but Regulus alone. He looked deep into the eyes of his brother that seemed to be more like him every day, and the three lonely words seemed to ask a million questions. Regulus stared for a moment before nodding. "Yes," he said hoarsely, before clearing his throat and trying again. "Yes, I am. We are." James hooked his arm around Regulus's waist, and Sirius' eyes locked on the gesture. His cheekbones hollowed into the same way Regulus's did when he was biting the insides of his cheek in anguish. It was a long moment before any of them spoke again. "I don't like it," Sirius said, crossing his arm, and Regulus let out a dry laugh. "I knew you wouldn't. And I don't like that I found out through a fucking drinking game from my boyfriend." Sirius cut off, and his eyes glazed over. James gulped nervously. "You told Remus," he said slowly. "Not willingly. He walked in on us," Regulus answered quickly. "And if it makes you feel any better," Remus piped up from where he was observing a few strides away, "it was absolutely traumatizing." How would that make me feel better, Moony?" Remus frowned. "I don't know. I've had too much whiskey." Sirius laughed, fond and genuine for the first time since James had taken that damn shot, and pointed an accusatory finger at his boyfriend. "We will be having words later." Remus winked. "Well, if you want something that will make you feel better," James said, pulling Sirius's attention back to them, "we broke it off at the beginning of this year because of you. Well, mainly because of you. But also because the lives we lead are so incompatible." And he paused. His next word came out barely a whisper. With the many things are going, I don't want to risk losing anything more than I already have to." "What's that supposed to mean?" Sirius asked. James sighed. "It means I realized that if I lost him, I would lose my mind, and distracting myself while I thought I still could seemed like the best option at the time." Regulus frowned and turned to face James. "Thought you still could?" And James scoffed, thumb rubbing silkers against the smaller boy's waist. "Don't be stupid, Rag," he said softly, biting his lip. "I think we both know that I can do that. I don't know who I was kidding." Sirius looked back and forth between the pair, expression softer now, lips parted slightly. Regulus felt his eyes prickle with tears and blinked rapidly, turning to his brother and taking a deep breath. "You're not just getting off, are you?" Sirius murmured. "This is," he gestured between the two lazy. "This is more." Regulus took a deep breath and looked at the floor. "We haven't exactly spoken about it, but—" "I love him," James said suddenly, and it was the most confident he had sounded all night. Regulus's head snapped up to lock eyes with James, and for a moment all thoughts of Sirius melted away, and it was just the two of them. "You don't have to say it back, Rag, but I love you," James whispered, barely audible, and this time Regulus's tears fell. He smiled, grasped James' free hand and nodded, and James knew. A sob dragged them both out of their bubble, and the pair's heads snapped up to find it had come from Lily, who was squeezing Remus' hand and crying large, happy tears. "Oh, God," she sniffed, fanning herself with one hand. "It's just so sweet." Regulus took a deep breath, and his eyes fell on Sirius. His older brother's eyes were also shimmering with tears. and his gaze was fixed upon their linked hands, his expression incomprehensible, and Regulus took a quick, uncertain look at James before clearing his throat. "Sirius," Regulus said, filled with wavering air of confidence. "I'm 16. I'm my own person. I know what I want. This is what I want." Sirius bit his lip in contemplation and then sighed deeply in defeat, running a hand over his face with a groan. "Merlin, Reg, of all the people in the fucking school, you had to pick this insufferable prat." James laughed loud and heartily, and Regulus' lips twitched, and when Sirius's hands fell, he saw his older brother was laughing too. James detached himself from Regulus and approached Sirius hesitantly. "So," he started, "we're good?" Sirius scoffed. "Yeah, we're good, you absolute wanker." James grinned and pulled Sirius into a bone-crushing hug. "But you try anything funny and I'll skin you alive, brother. Half of me came from Bulka Black. Don't you fucking forget it." Regulus laughed outright at this, nodding fondly. Sirius let go of James and turned to his little brother, and their smiles faltered slightly. After an awkward moment, Sirius exhaled and smiled. "Oh, come here, you big idiot." Regulus grinned and he fell into his brother's arms, and Sirius wrapped his arms protectively around his smaller brother, swaying ever so slightly. Regulus dug his head into Sirius's neck, breathing in deeply, and then maneuvered his head so his chin was resting upon Sirius's shoulder. "Thank you," he murmured, gripping him tightly. He felt Sirius chuckle slightly against him and felt his head move to rest next to his ear. "He hurts you. I'll kill him," Sirius whispered, invoking a loud laugh from Regulus. They pulled apart, and Regulus rested his hands on his brother's shoulder, cracking his lip and scanning his face. "No you won't," Regulus said fondly. Sirius laughed once more and shrugged his hands away. James approached them and hooked his hands around Regulus's waist once more, as if testing the waters. Sirius' eyes flicked to it and back again, and he simply smiled and nodded, turning tail towards Remus. "Come on, Moonbeam. Let's get you sober," he said fondly, wrapping his arm around his own boyfriend and pressing a kiss into his hair. Regulus smiled at the interaction and turned back to James, who was staring at him. Regulus crooked an eyebrow. "What?" James shrugged. "Wanna come back up with us?" he asked, inclining his head towards the three girls and Peter, who were waiting for them. Lily was beaming, her arms slung around Marlene, tears still lingering in her eyes. Regulus looked over the new welcoming faces waiting for him, and then back up to the face that he both knew and loved so much. He smiled. "Yeah, I think I do." This fic has been uploaded on AO3. It is not mine, it's not written by I'm only reading it for you. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.